It's raining out there today, and I was in the jail this week, and I was telling those guys in jail, I said, you guys better start praying for rain if you want to have some of that water. I said, somebody's going to have to get some from somewhere, and he goes, we don't manufacture it down there. So I was encouraging them to, like, join the whatever they do, dance, pray, whatever they do to, like, get some rain going here and fill these dams up around here in Northern California since the government ain't going to build any more dams. So I checked the redneck rain gauge as I came in, and it's got some water in it, so that's a good sign. And I was looking if it was dripping through the roof, but it's starting to rain right now. So if you stumble across this, you thought, who are these crazy guys? Well, this is Lou Benninger. We're out here and in East Linda. That's in Northern California. We're hoping it becomes the state of Jefferson before long. And we're talking about in the Yuba County, one of the 58 counties of California. It's one of the poorer counties, but we're here. And we used to be part of the Obama resistance during his presidency, and we have a bunker out here we work out of. And we have to work up on the mountain here, and today I got an all-wheel drive, but I didn't have to use it because it's just a little slick. It's not snowy yet. So we hiked in, and no snowshoes. We just made it on up. So welcome if you're listening to us today, and you may stick with us for the whole 3 hours, which is up to noon, or just you may get fed up after maybe 3 minutes. We'll see, but whatever you want to do is fine with me. I got blessed here. Wiki Man came in. He's running the board, Santos, and he brought some of this freshly roasted seasonal. It's called freshly roasted seasonal coffee, Temple Coffee, Temple. And it's pretty good. I'd never had any hot. The one they brought me the other day was cold. He stopped in at the Sunflower, which I believe it's the only place, Sunflower Market. It may be the only place in Yuba Sutter counties where you can buy Temple Coffee. And the young millennials over there that run that place, they think Temple Coffee is a thing to drink. It is pretty good. I had to add a little creamer. I drink a little creamer in there, and I heated it up, and it's actually good. So we're sitting out here drinking Temple Coffee. And if you like Temple Coffee, you know what that is, and you think, oh, I've been driving all the way to Sacramento for it. You can just go right there at the levee on Sutter Street, Sutter and Tea Garden in Yuba City, and you can get all the Temple Coffee you want 6 days a week. Just go drink gallons of that Temple Coffee. And if you like all those special drinks where they put all that foo-foo in there and mix it all together, chop all the ice up or whatever, you can get that too. I like just coffee. This is great tonight. So I was just going to make some of this cheap coffee we got out here at the Big Kahuna gives us. That's our pay. We get some free salted almonds and we can drink a little water and some of the coffee they have out here. And that's we're speaking for food out here. So we're going to be here for 3 hours, and for you that's to noon, but we're actually pre-recording this because we can't be here on Saturday. So the only difference that should make to you is if you wanted to talk to one of us, you can't do that. You can leave a message for the big dog, and that's at 742-5555. That's 530 area code, 742-5555. If you want to leave a comment, some of you are giving a yay, and some of you are giving a nay to the show. So either way is good for me. I just like to know where people are at sometimes. So this is, if you cared what station this is called The Patriot, KMYC, 1410 AM. So if you can't read the dial on your radio and you just are or you can't see very good, that's what you're listening to, if that makes any difference. So if you want to listen on another device besides a radio, the other day at the tip training, I mentioned a map, and everybody just kind of looked at me screwy, like they never heard of a map before. It's kind of like pretty soon a book will be, say what, a book, a newspaper? So if you want to listen on another device besides a radio, those old radios, you can go to your computer and get on to KMYCradio.com, KMYCradio.com, and just head on Listen Live, and you're good to go. Now, last week, I couldn't remember. I knew I was forgetting something. You know, it's like you leave the house, and you think, what am I leaving? What am I leaving? And so when I got home, I realized last week I didn't mention the YouTube connection. So if you are listening for a while and I start to say something and your wife calls you to like put in a new window in the back of the house or something, you get all goofed up, you can listen then anytime you want at this YouTube channel. So it's 4 words, just like in a sentence with a space in between, One Eye Blind Media, One Eye Blind Media. And when you get there, just look on the different lists of programs you can listen to and look for Live with Lou and click on that, and then click on whatever channel you or day you want to listen, and you're good to go. Okay, One Eye Blind Media. And Chris Starkey, who runs that channel, does that for us as a courtesy. And so we're thankful to Chris for that. And he does a lot of media work. So if you have a business and maybe you need some video work done, videography, or you need to have your Facebook site spruced up, or maybe even a website, he might be able to help you with that. And he's a pretty talented boy. So I get more compliments. Every week I get a compliment on that One Eye Blind Media, the way they kind of edit what I'm doing here, because some of the stuff I do here at the station can't go over there to YouTube because of copyright rules. So there's that. So we're enjoying the Temple Coffee. Thank you, Sunflower. And although we did pay for it, and so we paid twice. We paid for doing an advertisement, and we paid for this. So I was talking to Monty Hecker this week, and he has Elite Universal Security, and I was saying, Monty, tell me some of your success stories. So he says, I said, you got any success stories because people hired you to solve something? He said, I got a lot of cool stories. So they had a situation over behind El Zarape. El Zarape is a really nice Mexican restaurant in Yuba City that I like to eat at once in a while. I like Mexican food no matter what corner I'm eating it on. Even if it's on a taco stand. I said, just out of a truck, I don't care. As long as it's not Mexican food. That'll if I start to feel like a little zip coming in my system, that's Mexican food, not Mexican. So anyway, behind there's some office buildings, and the guy having his office over there, he noticed out the back door that somebody was leaving their business on this pad where you step out of the door, and he was leaving his little pile there every day, and he was leaving his newspaper and his coffee cup and part of a donut. So every day that was happening, and the guy tried to get there to catch that guy, and because he was leaving his stuff all over there, including his DNA, and so finally, in frustration, he called Monty, and Monty went over there and took a look at the place, and Monty is a bright guy, so he said, I'm going to put a camera up. So they put a camera in the window. They could look right out there, pointed just like right there, boom, and here he came. They looked at the film, and here he came. He had his newspaper, cup of coffee, and donut, and he stole a paper from somebody's place, and squat down there and did his business, and then hung around there for a while because he wanted to enjoy the rest of his morning routine, and then he left. So anyway, they caught him. And anyway, they caught him. And so Monty says, a lot of times the problem is they hire us and we run ourselves out of a job because we solve the problem. And so the police told the guy, if you don't quit leaving your business here, that's going to be one thing. Then we've got a littering thing because you left your newspaper and coffee cup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we have to deal with nowadays in Yuba Sutter area because law enforcement, you think, oh, well, it's law enforcement. They're just a bunch of screw-offs. Well, they aren't really. Law enforcement actually is working under your boards of supervisors and your city council. So if those boards of supervisors and city council talk to the sheriff or to the police and say, leave those people alone, they just say, back off. They're paying their bills, right? They say, back off. So then Monty says, I'll tell you another story because it's happened right over in your neighborhood. So over in my neighborhood, I live just behind Taco Bell in Marysville, and across the street is Walgreens, and then across the street CVS and Starbucks, and there's a little cell phone store and a bank. And that complex has had a lot of problems with homeless people getting in the dumpsters and breaking stuff, breaking glass and causing problems, digging through stuff and panhandling. And so they've hired Elite Universal Security to come over there, and the police aren't responding, right? So the Elite, I was over there the other day. I had to pick up some gift certificates for the tip training. And, man, they had a really sharp, I was telling Monty, I said, that guy looks like a full-fledged police officer, man. He carries himself like a really highly trained law enforcement professional. He said, oh, yeah, we get all kinds of compliments about that guy. And he said, in fact, he was over there one day, young guy, and he says, over where Panda Express is, where they eat outside. You can take your food outside and eat at a table. And there was a person sleeping right there in the middle of all the tables. Well, it was an unconscious person. So how do a person could be dead, right? So the guy went over and shook the person or rousted him, and no movement. So he thought, oh, I got a problem here. So he got on his radio and started calling for the police and ambulance. And the person said, hey, wait a minute. Don't call anybody. I'm just fooling you. I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to sleep here. I didn't want you to bother me. And he said, dude, you can't sleep here because people are trying to eat their food. Come in here and eat their food. So anyway, but people just playing games, right? The guy wouldn't sleep at all. They just said, I'm just going to play like I'm out, and they got to just leave me alone. So there it is. People just dragging their feet around town, no job, won't go into rehab, won't go into the federal or the rescue mission, Joshua House, Federal Men's Center, any of the rehabs, Depot, all these options all over the place. But government comes in, and all of a sudden we create all these new options. Somehow the taxpayers got to come up with all these new options because there's not enough options. And so if you are out there with a business in the Yuba Sutter area or up there in Butte County or up all the way up there into Redding, you can hire Elite Universal Security, and they'll solve your problem that are running your customers off, right? One of my friends has a business in town, and he went in one morning to work, and somebody had done a pile right there in front of his front door. It's just like, come on, man. So anyway, you can dial up Monty Hecker at Elite Universal Security at 749-0280. That's a 530 area code. Once again, 749-0280. You can go on EliteUniversalSecurity.com. They're looking to hire people. So Monty said, hey, we got a guy that is just getting ready to retire from Sutter County as a security guy, and he started with us and got a full-time job over there, and now he's about time to retire. So if you want to take some classes on how to get your gun license or whatever, all those kind of things, I'll talk about it later more, but you can go to api-academy.com and check out all the classes and schooling that they offer, and they'll train you. So I wanted to, since I'm talking about leaving piles by businesses, there's an amazing article this week because and the interesting thing, I talked to a gentleman. He called me the other day. He lives in Yuba City now. He used to work for the health department in San Francisco, and he worked there when the AIDS epidemic just started, and they didn't even know, they didn't have a label for it. They didn't call it HIV. They didn't have AIDS. They just thought people are getting really sick and dying. Boom. They got diarrhea, sores all over their body, and then they just like succumb, as some people say, died, passed, come to pass, as the Bible said, and meet your maker. And so it's interesting. Some people refer to today as like the book 1984, the George Orwell book, because everything that's should be up is now considered down, and everything considered down is now up. It's just everything's topsy-turvy, stood on its head. So now we've gone from one of the most modern societies in the world to now third world society, where now we created all these amazing water systems and sewage systems in our country, so people don't die. It's like the person once said, "Don't excrete where you eat." Right? Don't excrete where you eat. So, so it's important, like, to keep your business separate from your food and from your drink. And so, but now we're inviting, because we're so liberal and we're so politically correct, that we allow people to take a poop wherever they want to. And we allow people to throw their needles wherever they want to and sleep wherever they want to. And so what that does is it creates a disease hazard for all the rest of us, right? Because maybe you use the toilet and you wash your hands afterwards, and you have a certain thing you've been taught as a cultural thing, so you're able to take care of your business, and yet you're healthy. You remain healthy. So NBC Bay Area did a big investigative report on the streets of San Francisco. And this is actually pretty sobering. And when I go to San Francisco, I usually take the subway across from the East Bay, come up from BART, the rapid transit. I come up from underground and go up at the Civic Center outlet, and then I walk right through where they're talking about here. So what they did is they surveyed 153 blocks of downtown San Francisco, and they just did a survey of the trash and the needles and the feces. That's SHIT for those in Olivehurst and Linden, but I can't say that because some people get upset about it and sue the company here. And so the investigation revealed trash littered on every one of the 153 blocks. The survey also found 41 blocks dotted with needles. 41 blocks, they found needles, and 196 blocks had actual piles. Human little piles. You got it? Okay. Just hold that thought. So, this is more than a 20-mile stretch, including popular tourist spots like Union Square, major hotel chains, bordered. These are, if you know San Francisco, you'll recognize these streets. Van Ness, Market, Post, Grant, also City Hall. That's where I would walk right by City Hall when I'd go up to the Chinese embassy to pick up a visa for China. I'd hike up there, maybe 15-minute walk. Playgrounds, and right by schools, and a police station. And we got hypodermic needles, used food that came out the back of a human being. You know what I'm saying? And so the investigative unit photographed nearly a dozen hypodermic needles scattered across one block, where a group of preschool students happened to walk by on their way to an afternoon field trip. So the teacher, her name's Adelita Oriana, she said, "We see poop, we see pee, we see needles, and we see trash." Sometimes the kids ask, "What is that?" That's a bummer, man. You got these little kids, these preschoolers and stuff. What is that? And that's a conversation that's a little difficult to have, said Adelita, with a 2-year-old kid. But we just let them know that those things are full of germs and that they are dangerous and they should never be touched. Now, in America, once upon a time, just 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, we didn't have to go there, seeing it right on the street. But as the famous administrator for Sutter County, Scott Mitnick, who lives in, his people are all in Southern California, where he'd rather be, but he can't get a job down there. So he came up here. Scott says he calls this, he won't call it poop or SHIT or feces. He calls it unclaimed debris. That's what we call it in Sutter County. It's a euphemism, right? It's just like when they call a baby a fetus, right? Or just or a bunch of cells, right? So this unit, this NBC spent 3 days assessing the conditions on the streets of downtown San Francisco. They discovered trash everywhere. They found 100 drug needles and 300 piles of feces. Is that amazing or what? 300 piles. Now, what the Dr. Lee Riley, now my guy that called me from a local guy here, the guy's brilliant. He used to be one of the top disease control guys in San Francisco. And this Dr. Lee Riley, he's an infectious disease expert at University of California, Berkeley. He says if you get stuck with one of those disposed needles, you can get HIV, hepatitis C, hepatitis B, and a variety of other viral diseases. And he said that once fecal matter dries, it can become airborne, and it releases potentially dangerous viruses such as rotavirus. So he said if you happen to inhale that, it can go right into your intestines and it can kill you, especially kids. So we're walking these little 2, 3, 4, 5. You put your kids in preschool and then they march them by pile after pile of feces and drug needles. Do we have to take a break? Or are we good? We're going to take a break and we're coming right. Well, all right. This is Lou Benninger. You're listening to Live with Lou, and we're here to our second half hour. Again, we're pre-recording this. It's fresh. It's the best used by date is on March 3rd, but if you may be able to, you can also hear it at One Eye Blind Media if you don't have time to catch it on March 3rd. But after that, it's going to be stale after March 3rd, right? If you listen later than that. So I wanted to tell you that I write articles about various things that I talk about in the Territorial Dispatch. It's a weekly paper that is there's quite a few available in Yuba and Sutter counties. Some of them make it up to Nevada County, and some of them make it up to Butte County, I think. And I don't know whether some make it to Colusa County or not. But I wrote an article a couple weeks ago about Black History Month, and a woman. She got so flared up about it, she started calling the Territorial and cussing people out. It's how people do. They're really big. They're tough people because they call up instead of talking to the owner, they cuss out the secretary. Right? They do. They don't have the balls to talk to the owner, so they cuss out the secretary, drop the F-bomb, and get all nasty and everything. So anyway, this woman, she'd been calling around to all the advertisers in the Territorial Dispatch, threatening them, and trying to do their business, hurt their business, right? Intimidate them, right? People just getting nasty. And I'm going to read you a clip here in a minute. Well, let me slip right over here, and I'm just going to tell you something about this, and then I'm going to go back to this San Francisco thing, but I want to talk about this because I want to talk about the Tea Party for a minute. And so anyway, this lady has been raising all kinds of stink. And so I read this last week, and I'm going to read it again to you because the difference between a conservative and a liberal, this woman's liberal. She didn't like my article about Black History Month. And most of my friends thought it was a real positive article, but it all depends. It's all in the eye of the beholder, right? So I read this last week, and I got some comments on it, so if you didn't get to hear it, I'll tell you it again. If you ever wondered what side of the fence you sit on, check this out. If a conservative doesn't like guns, he doesn't buy a gun. If a liberal doesn't like guns, he wants all guns outlawed. If a conservative is a vegetarian, he doesn't bother eating meat. If a liberal is a vegetarian, he wants all meat products banned for everybody. If a conservative is down and out, he thinks about how to better his situation in life. A liberal wonders who's going to take care of him. If a conservative doesn't like a talk show host, he switches the channels. Liberals demand that those they don't like be shut down. If a conservative is a non-believer, he doesn't go to church. A liberal, however, if he's a non-believer, he wants any mention of God and Jesus scrubbed or silenced. If a conservative decides he needs health care, he goes about shopping for it or may choose a job that provides it. A liberal demands that the rest of us pay for his health care. If a conservative reads, well, I'll stop there. So this woman, she did not like what I said. Instead, she could submit her own perspective to the Territorial Dispatch, but maybe she's not literate enough to write. So maybe some of you people out there, a lot of you are conservative people, but you never do anything. It's a concept to you. It's a belief. And I'll tell you what, beliefs don't change jack diddly. If you don't put some muscle or money or some sweat behind your beliefs, you're just sucking in air and drinking the water on this earth, and you're of no good use to yourself. Some of you conservatives, you wouldn't spend anything to support the Territorial Dispatch, but if it's gone tomorrow because of something, you think, oh my God, what are we going to do without the Territorial Dispatch, right? Instead of you buying an ad in it, if you have a business out there, instead of buying an ad and making some money off the paper and supporting the paper, you just think you're just like a welfare recipient. You want a handout. You Republicans, you conservatives, you got that entitlement mentality just like the liberals. And so maybe you ought to put your money where your mouth is and support the territorial. This woman's not going to bring the territorial down by itself, but what happens is business people don't like to get roughed up. Now, I'll give you an example. I'll get back to the San Francisco thing. Just remind me if I don't get there, and I'll get right back to it. So, but I was noticing, I fly to Asia a lot, and I used to fly whichever airline was the cheapest, and then I quit flying any airlines that are American-based airlines, like United Airlines or Northwest, because I got tired of them breaking down on me and having lousy service. They just had bad attitudes. The people had bad attitudes, the workers. And so I had a 4-leg trip, 2 flights over, 2 flights back. 3 of the legs had mechanical problems on United Airlines. I never flown them again. So I noticed that United Airlines, after this shooting down here in Florida, that they're going to show some muscle, because I didn't even know that NRA members could get discounts on flights. I didn't know that till this. Or they could get discounts at various corporations. I just never, I'm an NRA member, but I never read the literature. I just said, hey, I'm going to support this and go on about my way. So I noticed that United Airlines cut off the NRA discounts. And but the interesting thing about these hypocrites like United Airlines is they're a big supporter of Planned Parenthood. So Planned Parenthood kills over 300,000 babies, people, human beings a year. And so they're going to muscle with the NRA when the NRA didn't shoot anybody, right? They're just an organization. But so it's a political PR ploy by the United Airlines. And they got blood on their hands because they not only donate to Planned Parenthood, they have sponsored fundraisers for these gnarly people. So last year, Planned Parenthood killed roughly 320,000 babies. And United Airlines right in the middle of it. So you pro-lifers, again, I'm not saying you need to organize a boycott. Spend your money where it benefits the things that you're interested in. If an organization is pro-life and the other one is pro-abortion and giving money to abortion, why don't you support pro-life? If an organization hates Trump and is constantly talking trash about Trump, why would you go to that organization and spend money there? Why don't you support organizations that do what you believe in, right? Or they're anti-military, etc. It's the arguments are endless. So anyway, I'll just leave that there. Let me get back over here to the disease streets of San Francisco. So I was talking about this NBC investigative unit that just got down on the streets, and they said, I'm going to go look for myself. Now, I've walked this area, and I have stepped over drunks, and I walked around and watched where I was stepping on the way up to the Chinese embassy. So Dr. Lee Riley, who's an infectious disease expert, professor at the University of California, Berkeley, he starts explaining this for the article that came out of this NBC research. He said that dry fecal matter, it can just become airborne. Then you think, oh, well, there's just a pile. I just don't want to step in it, right? But if it becomes dry and nobody picks it up and gets rid of it and washes the concrete down or the pavement down, then it becomes dry and becomes airborne and people get sick. Dr. Riley says, parts of the city may be even dirtier than the slums in some developing countries. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. Maybe you don't travel. I do. He says the contamination is much greater than the communities in Brazil, Kenya, or India. Now, I've been to Kenya and India. I have not been to Brazil, but I'm telling you, the slums in Kenya and India, and even the nicer areas without going down the center of the big cities, are pretty rugged. Riley, the doctor, notes in these countries, slum dwellings are often long-term homes for families, and so there's an attempt to make the surroundings more livable. That means they clean it up. Homeless communities in San Francisco, however, are often kicked out from one part of town and forced to relocate to another. The result is extreme contamination. They poop and run. That's the deal. That's what he's saying. Poop and run instead of eat and run. So Mohammed Nuru, he's a director of San Francisco Public Works. And here's what old Mohammed says. He says cleaning human waste, his job is to clean human waste, trash, and needles from the city's sidewalks. He's overseeing that. You know how much it costs each year? I want you to just take a guess. And, I can't hear you, whatever you're saying. So just take a guess over there in wherever you're hanging out today, whether you're sitting in your car. Well, I want you to think a minute when you pay your taxes and what you think your tax dollars are going for, because cleaning the city's sidewalks is costing $30 million a year. Is that unbelievable? $30 million a year. So Mr. Nuru, Mohammed Nuru, is cleaning the streets over and over and over again because people are going multiple times, right? They just don't go once and that's it for the rest of their life, right? That's a bad sign. So he says, yes, we clean, and then we go back a few hours later and we clean again, and we go back a few hours later. So they have, instead of Ghostbusters, Poop Busters over there. He said, we'll go back a few hours later, and Mr. Nuru, Muhammad, he said it looks like we never cleaned. So he says, that's how you want, he said, the question is, is that how we want to spend our money? Man, I'm telling you what. So in other words, the public works budget for San Francisco in the 2016-17 fiscal year was $60.1 million for street environmental services. So you think, they're going to sweep the streets, right, and wash them down and stuff. Half of it's going up on the sidewalks, right, cleaning up feces and needles. And check this out. You worked in maintenance, and you know how long, like if you'd go out and say you have a broken pipe underground, how long you'd figure that take you? Maybe 45 minutes by the time you get the stuff, go out there, dig the hole, da-da-da-da, put it there, try it out. So a single pile, this is what a single pile of human waste takes at least 30 minutes for one of his staffers to clean. That means the steamer has to come. You got to fire up the steamer, get it hot. And he's got to steam it, disinfect it, steam it, roll up, pack up, go. 30 minutes. Now, you know they're getting paid good down there in San Francisco as well. So is that unbelievable, or what am I saying here? It's blowing my mind. Now, this is something that also, this whole gun thing is so crazy, and these liberals are so offensive, and they're stupid. And so this last week, they've been making fun of Donald Trump, right? And you know what this last week, have you caught this? Because he made a comment, he had a big meeting, a brainstorming meeting with top officials, politicians and stuff. And he made a comment that, let me see if I can find it here. He said, he's talking to the whole room. He says, I really believe, he's talking about the school shooting, I would have run in there even if I didn't have a weapon. But he just wasn't talking about himself. And he said, then he went on, and he said, and I think most of the people in this room would have done the same thing. I can see us saying that when we all work together at Glad Tidings. We'd say, I think I'd have run in there and done something, right? And I think everybody here would have, right? And everybody probably shook their head like, wow, I hope I would have, right? And so the media twists that and mocked him. But the problem is, they just never have learned who this guy is, right? So anyway, in 1991, Donald Trump was in his limousine, right, being driven, and a guy was getting mugged by a guy with a base. Did you hear this? Getting mugged by a guy with a baseball bat. I love this. And they pulled the limousine up. He got out and yelled at the guy. And the guy stopped and walked over to him. And because it was a big guy with a bat, and he was bashing another fellow. And so he confronted the armed assailant, who recognized him as Don Trump, right? And he said, I didn't do anything wrong. In other words, he denied it after they watched him do it. Typical criminal, right? Said, I didn't, got cocaine all around his nose. I didn't sniff any cocaine. So he asked the mugger, I saw you do it. What do you mean you didn't do anything wrong? You were whacking the guy with a bat. The mugger ran away, but he stopped the guy from getting beat up. Now, just before that, Trump's mother had been beaten up. Did you know that? Yeah, so I'm sure it was fresh in his mind. His mom was beat up on the streets by a mugger. And so here he's witnessing it again, and he got out. He's a big guy. And so he stopped, and the guy stopped. So, for these weaselly. Now, here's the interesting thing. These same people, like they mocked him. They said, well, what do you mean you're going to go and you skipped Vietnam, right? They tied in the Vietnam thing. Now, these are the same people that if he had gone to Vietnam, they would have called him a baby killer. You're either a baby killer or you were too spineless to actually be drafted, right? You're a wimp. You're either baby killer, wimp. In other words, no matter what you do, if you're a conservative, you're wrong. It's just so hypocritical and so incredibly bad. I got a kick out of it because, the thing is, it's just like that clip we played where he paid for that guy's cancer treatment. If Obama would do that, you would hear about it all year. That guy wouldn't pick up, and he wouldn't buy a hamburger for anybody, that Obama. What a ripoff. People that did drugs with Obama, they said that sucker wouldn't even buy his own cigarettes. He's always hustling a cigarette off you or wanting you to spot him some crack cocaine. Guy was a total mooch, just a total mooch. So anyway, there's that. Hey, you may have noticed, all you people out there in some of these other counties, we've had a terrible time in Yuba and Sutter County with our leadership. And we got people having sex with the wrong people. They start out with one woman, and they're having sex with her. They call her the wife. And then they're having sex with another person, or they want to have a bunch of people have sex all together. And then we got people that they claim they're law enforcement and they put women in the car and get a little service from the women. It's crazy. We got supervisors and PE teachers touching girls on the rear end. I mean, it's I don't know what's happened over there in Placer or Colusa County, Nevada County, Butte County, but I'm telling you, down here, it's weird. It's like really weird. It's hard to find a candidate. We say, oh yeah, he's married, he's a nice guy. Then you find out he's got a girlfriend, right? He's got a lady on the side, and his wife doesn't know jack about it, but everybody else knows. It's like she's the last one to figure it out. So this Aaron Easton was accused. Here he's the police chief. You know, it was rumored all over town that Aaron Easton was having sex with other people other than his wife, and then his wife comes up dead and with a gunshot to the head, and the police won't close the case. They won't say she shot herself. Well, why don't they just say it and get it over with if they're not going to do jack diddly about it? Just call it, and let's just move on. And so if they don't have the backbone to deal with this, whether it's the Attorney General or Yuba City Police, let's just call it. What are you going to do? Wait for the next police chief to come in or the next city council? Like, let's get some Spaldings and deal with it. So what happened is, in the midst of this controversy with Easton's wife a couple of years ago, the brilliant city council of Marysville, out of all the law enforcement officials up and down California, the best choice they could put in there was Aaron Easton. And so, lo and behold, a gal gets arrested in Sacramento County and is being interviewed down there and is probably being given the PREA. If you don't know about PREA, that's whether, telling you don't have to be abused if you're in jail. We don't tolerate any sexual abuse. And so she happened to mention in passing, they said, well, have you had any sexual abuse in your life? And she said, yeah, I have. It's just a fact. Like, do you ever get hit in the head? Yeah, I had. So she said, yeah. They said, well, when did that happen? So she began to tell a story, not to make a big deal about it or to get any money. She just said, this happened when I was in the Yuba College Police Academy. I was a cadet, and I went for a ride along, and this guy made me service him in the front of the car. And so making an accusation like that, the Sacramento Sheriff's Department had to report it to the Yuba County Sheriff's Department, who then had to investigate it. And, that's the way it works. She never thought anything was going to happen, but that's the way it works. It's a mandated deal. You got to do that. So they did this investigation, and actually they corroborated. That means it made sense what she was saying, because although it happened years ago, 10 years ago maybe, she quoted the time, place, what kind of call they were on, and they looked it up on the computers, and they said, yeah, they were on those type of calls. That's where he was that night, because they have it all on the computer. 10 years later, they go back and look. Yeah, they did respond to a call at that time of night. So obviously it placed her inside the car. So anyway, Pat McGrath, the district attorney, just sent out a news release. I have never seen a news release like this in my life. It was the most detailed. They did almost 3,000 pages of investigation, written investigation on this. And basically they said their interview of Easton, they found they didn't tell the truth. And their interview of her, they found some flaws in her testimonies as well, but they believed her because they said she knew so much, and there was no personal gain in it for her, and she didn't even know where Easton was or that he was a police chief. She just said, this happened to me. But they concluded that they didn't have enough evidence. They didn't believe they could convince all 12 jurors without a shadow of a doubt, right? So they dropped the case, but they basically said, we believe he did it. Amazing statement. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. All right. Well, earlier I was talking about a lady that went ballistic and has been trying to stir up trouble because she doesn't like other people having free speech. And I never got around to saying this, but what I wanted to bring up is another lady was doing the same thing this last week, and she was attacking me and attacking the Sutter Buttes Tea Party Patriots. And I thought, oh, I'm in good company if they're going to go after both of us. I felt more comfortable if it just wasn't me out there. So Sutter Butte Tea Party Patriots, along with Monty Hecker and his Universal Security, they support us out here and actually make it possible for us to talk to you once a week. And so Bill at Sutter Butte Tea Party Patriots asked me to let you know that the meeting coming up Monday, March 5 at 6:30 at location is Church of Glad Tidings. The church gives them a good deal on building out there, and they are going to have their meeting that they have twice a month on the first and third Mondays, and it's a 2-hour meeting, and you don't have to belong, you don't have to join, you don't have to pay anything. You just go and enjoy yourself, and they have a gentleman there that his name is James Stone. He's the president of the NorCal Guides and Sportsmen's Association. So if you like to fish or hunt, you might like to listen to this guy, and maybe you're interested in becoming a guide or something. But he's also the author and owner of EliteSportsman.com. Elite Sportsman is a business. It's a premier hunting and fishing guide service, and you can check it out at EliteSportsman.com. And he's got 25 years of hunting and fishing experience in the United States, James Stone, and he grew up here in California. But he's going to speak on the economic impact of all the damage done to the river from the Oroville Dam disaster last year about this time. All the sand, all the sediment, the big, huge gush of water that was let out when the spillway failed. So a lot of us have, I did some pencil work of my own and just tried to figure out what the economic impact would have been, not of the river, but of 180 or 200,000 people that had to uproot themselves and move and pay the gasoline, the hotel, eating out at restaurants, and not being at their business and losing all that. We're talking about $1 billion or so, $1 billion or more of loss in revenue and loss of income, lots of doing business. Kids out of school, think about that. Although when their butts aren't in the seat, they don't get that average daily attendance money. So check out Sutter Butte's Tea Party. Get involved. Go out there. They're the guys that stood up for my friend, Kumar Kairam, and fought for him to have the right to sell what he wanted out of his own little grocery store and mini mart, whatever you want to call it, where they sell some minimal grocery items and candy and all kinds of stuff and liquor. They helped him fight the city of Yuba City. You think the city of Yuba City were going to respond to him? No way. They're just going to jack him around. That's the way government is. And Sutter Butte's Tea Party stood up for him and fought for him, and they won. And they've gone out to city council meetings and supervisors before. I've been encouraging them to do more of that, and in addition to their 2 times a month meetings. So now, March 19th, I told you about March 5th with James Stone with his guide company, Elite Sportsman. But the 19th, there's going to the sheriff candidates for the 2 counties are going to be there, and they're going to have a big town hall meeting. So that should be really interesting. Now, there's a number of candidates for the Sutter County Sheriff's Department that are going to be there. Yuba County, I think, just has 1 candidate to replace Sheriff Durfer, and that's Wendell Anderson. But in Sutter County, they have at least 3 candidates, I believe. So they'll all be there, and that's the 19th. And then on the 25th, the Sutter Butte's Tea Party Patriots are going to host a constitutional training seminar for sheriff candidates, deputies, and citizen supporters of the sheriff on Sunday, March 25th. And they want pre-registration for this. It's a 1-day event, and because they got to get organized and they have to probably print some materials, etc. So listen, you need to get educated on this whole concept of a constitutional sheriff, because the sheriff is the highest constitutional officer with the highest authority in the county. And the sheriff can withstand the federal government. Now, you probably thought, oh, well, we all have to bow at the altar of the federal government. That's totally contrary to the Constitution. If you think, oh, it can't be that way, the federal government tells us, they can overrule the states. It wasn't supposed to be that way. And in fact, James Madison said in, I think it's Federalist Paper 45, that the only authority that the federal government was supposed to have is just to deal with foreign countries. Hold that thought. So if you want to hear the truth about this, you need to go to that constitutional training seminar. It's for candidates, deputies, and citizen supporters. I think it'd be very interesting. So pre-registration, contact Tammy at 530-701-2845. I'm sure that anybody from all these other counties, Butte County, whatever county you're listening from, it applies to your county as well. So come and dip into that. 530-701-2845. 530-701-2845. Check it out and get involved. I think that's a very interesting seminar. And it's on Sunday. I mean, that should work for you, March 25th. March 19th at night, 6:30 at night, will be the town hall meeting for both Sutter and Yuba County Sheriff's deputies. You got it? All right. So we'll get back to business here. All right. So earlier I was talking about San Francisco's filthy cities. San Francisco is one of the wealthiest cities in the United States. So when you think they're spending $30 million, you know what this is like? This is like not giving your kids any directives or education or discipline, and they just mess up the house. They don't take care of their bedroom. They leave their toys outside, and you just constantly spend your time, your money to buy new clothes, new toys, because they forget their jacket at school. They leave their items outside. They get damaged. And so instead of disciplining your kids and training your kids so they manage the assets of the household well, you just constantly clean up and pay more. That's exactly what this is. $30 million to clean up the streets. Why don't people clean up the streets themselves? Like I go out, I live behind Taco Bell. And so I pick up Taco Bell crap all the time. Burrito wrappers, brown bags, or whatever bags they come in, white bags, whatever. Those little hot sauce deals, those little plastic, whatever they are, are they plastic or whatever? The little hot sauce deals. They cut them, squeeze their stuff out, throw them out on the ground, or their cups constantly. People just they live like pigs, right? So instead of like managing the pigs, we just say you can just do whatever you want in our society, and we'll clean up after you and charge the people that are behaving themselves. Is that crazy or what? The guys that are behaving themselves, cleaning up after themselves, got to pay for all the idiots that are running around town screwing things up. So that is, if you think, oh, that's just happening in Santa Cruz, hepatitis B has broken out and killing people in Santa Cruz, in L.A., and San Diego. You think, oh, San Diego? It's like beautiful San Diego? Yeah, beautiful. You know why? It doesn't matter whether they consider themselves conservative or not. They behave themselves. You remember there's a difference between belief and behavior. They believe in their head they're conservative, but their behavior is liberal, right? Because they've been totally infiltrated in their brain by political correctness, which is stupid thinking, right? Stupid thinking. So, in other words, they think, oh, it's okay. We can excrete where we eat and everything's going to be fine, right? So, anyhow, that's that deal. Now, I was talking to you about how Aaron Easton, the police chief of Marysville, was accused by the district attorney of Yuba County after the district attorney and the sheriff's department in Yuba County were contacted by the Sacramento County sheriff because a woman in jail said, once upon a time, this patrol guy, forced me into having a sex act with him. And so Aaron Easton resigned. I think he was pressured into resigning by the city administrator, Walter Munchheimer, at that time, and thank God for it. That's maybe the only act that Walter Munchheimer pulled off in his time here that was actually a positive act. So, very interesting developments. Now, the other thing that happened this last week, and I wrote about it in the Territorial Dispatch, if you go to territorialdispatch.biz, territorialdispatch.biz, you can read all about it. Just go there to the website, click on the current issue, and you can read 2 articles I wrote on recall elections. One is on Jim Whitaker, who is the physical education teacher at Yuba City High School that has been accused for years by women of inappropriate behavior towards young ladies, teenage ladies, bullying, touching them in their improper areas, etc. So the school district has placed him on leave, which really doesn't, they still pay him. He doesn't teach. And it's not up to the school system to really fire him because the union has got all the school systems in California by the short hairs. And so the firing goes through a 3-person panel, an administrative law judge, which is owned by the union, and 2 teachers. So he's waiting to have his day before that commission. But in the meantime, the residents of the 4th District in Sutter County said, listen, whether or not he's ever canned as a teacher, his behavior has made him ineligible to be a supervisor in our view. And we don't care how effective he is in some areas of his life. We don't want him as a supervisor. So they filed to do a recall election. You have to get 20 signatures of people that are registered to vote in that district, and then submit them, serve the supervisor, and then once you serve them, you need to turn that into the county clerk, and that begins a process of recall. That doesn't mean they're recalled. That means it just begins the process. And so the second part of the process is that petitions need to be designed and approved by the county clerk, Donna Johnston, and then you have a certain amount of days. In this case, I believe you have 90 days, and they probably need around 2,500 or 2,800 registered voter signatures in that 4th district to put it on the ballot. They'll probably, if it makes the ballot, it will make the November 2018 ballot. So there's all kinds of articles in the paper about that, and all kinds of people that are threatening. I always get a kick out of people that are the supporters of the person getting recalled. They call up people and threaten them. Like, we're going to get you. We're going to come after you. In other words, you can't have free speech anymore. We're going to make it really hard on you. We're going to damage your business. We're going to sue you. We're going to get you for this, get you that. Now, Mr. Whitaker's said in the paper, if it's true, that he's going to take the gloves off and really come after everybody. Well, honestly, either these girls are, and they're not just girls, by the way, as young as 14 and probably as old as 34, 35, because a lot of these people moved on in life and didn't feel like the government was going to do anything for them. Did you know this whole mandated or mandatory reporter issue? If you're a mandated reporter and you don't do your job in reporting something, you don't have to see it. You could just be told that something happened. You are mandated to report that to the authorities. And if not, you can go to jail and you can be fined thousands of dollars. Did you know that? In fact, I had a guy here that lives in Yuba County who knows what he's talking about most things I've ever talked to him about. He seemed like an expert on lots of stuff. He was at one time a principal at Truckee High School, and he said, Lou, you can lose your teaching credential for not reporting a child abuse situation. And so when Mr. Whitaker threatens people, I just wonder what the district's going to do, because now we got 2 lawsuits by young women, youngsters. Their parents have sued the district. And why would the district get sued? Because the district is the government, and the government says you have to bring our kids to this school. If you don't bring your kids to school, we can file charges against you. So that you bring your kids to a government school, and then they don't take care of them. They don't protect them, right? Even the resource officers on school campus isn't doing proper reporting, and the police didn't do proper reporting. So why would you have any confidence in the Yuba City Unified School District? And so for now, all these years, from 1996, as far back as I've talked to women on the phone that are adult women. One of them actually works for the district now, who was violated and never reported. She said, Lou, I was so ashamed. I was shy. I thought everybody on campus is going to hear about this. It's going to be so embarrassing. I'm just going to I'm not even going to tell my parents. In fact, she just told her parents as an adult woman 2 or 3 weeks ago. So, I don't know how you're going to, unless you're going to try to convince a court that these people are slandering this physical education teacher. To me, it's a stretch. And so that is an article I wrote. You can read all about it. And the other thing that's happening, there's a lot of other things going on that campus. There was rumored that a second teacher was put on leave. And my assumption was that it was the teacher that the girls reported that Mr. Whitaker grabbed their rear end. There's a dispute over that. Mr. Whitaker says, I just punched her with my knee in the rear end thinking these 2 girls were scrapping instead of goofing off. But the girl told another teacher what he did, and the teacher didn't do anything about it. In fact, he made fun of her. So I thought maybe that teacher was put on leave, but it was reported by another news station. But the school won't tell parents anything. So they said, no, that's not true. Well, what is true? Was there any discipline? Maybe there was some other kind of discipline given to him. But here's something else that happened a week ago, is that the varsity basketball coach was fired. Now, that's interesting in light of what happened to Whitaker, because there have been complaints about the varsity basketball coach being a bully, and nothing's been done about that. Now, I'm not saying 1 or 2 complaints should get everybody fired. I'm just saying, well, maybe they're finally taking some of these accusations seriously and addressing some of this misbehavior on behalf of the teachers. I don't know. You know why we never do really know? Because the government doesn't think the citizens are worthy of an explanation of anything. Like, we're the government. It's like their parents, and like they don't need to explain anything to the kids. We're the parents. Shut your mouth. Mind your own business, shut your mouth, and we're going to do whatever we want in this school system or this government. And that isn't how the government was supposed to work. Now, that's how it's working by law, because the unions have got the whole system by the short hairs, and it's corrupt. The unions are corrupt. The administration's corrupt. There's all kinds of weird stuff. Did you know at one time, it's about 15, 20 years ago now, the superintendent of Yuba City Unified was caught in the river bottoms having sex with the police chief's wife. Now, that's a bad sign when that happens. That's a bad sign. And a superintendent is supposed to be the model and the leader and a mentor of our entire student body and all the teachers and everything. And they caught him in Riverfront Park banging the police chief's wife. Now, I want you to just stop and think about that for a while. I mean, what do you do with that kind of stuff? And then they want you to send your kids to that school? What respect as a school teacher would you have for the superintendent who's having sex with the police chief's wife? Is that crazy or what? It's just crazy. I don't know what this. I guess people think it's cool. I think they think, oh yeah, I mean, certainly if people in the district attorney's office are having sex with other people's family members and group sex, I guess it just becomes no big deal to them. It's interesting. Nobody wants to talk about our culture or our values anymore. They just want to talk about taking everything away. Like, let's take all the guns away. Well, the other day we had an anger management class. Are we out of time? Oh, because my clock isn't matching up, right? I'm trusting your deal. So I was in an anger management class, in a women's class, and we were going around. I said, any of you women ever been violent with your partner? And one of them said, yeah. I took a boulder and hit my husband in the head with a boulder. Well, I don't know whether we need to talk about removing all boulders from society, but because that woman, she said, I took a boulder that I could pick up and I smashed him in the head with it. And I thought, well, I'm glad I didn't get high and hang out with you very long. Before I was looking the other way, she might have whacked me in the head. So I thought, I don't know what kind of benefits there are running with you, but that whack in the head may just erase all of them, right? Just erase all of them. So anyway, there is the crazy stuff going on out there, and nobody's talking about trying to encourage people to not have premarital sex, but to get married and to court people and to behave yourself and have 2-parent households and, encourage people not to drink alcohol, right? You know what I know? Are you ever on Facebook? You have that. Do you notice how many people flaunt drinking alcohol? I have a lot of friends on all kinds of the fence. I got criminal friends. I got cop friends. They flaunt alcohol. Like they'll take a picture of their drink on a bar and they'll send it to you as if you're interested in that drink sitting on the bar. It's like, why do you send that to me? Why don't you send me a picture of yourself? See if you're good looking that night. Instead, they just send a picture of a bar, the top of a bar in a saloon or something with a drink with a little thing sticking out of it. I think, why did you send that to me? Or they'll send me a picture of the hamburger they're eating. I thought, why do you do that? It's just like crazy. So people have lost their mind. We should have a conversation of how we treat children and how we parent children and what kind of, maybe we should have a rule that the superintendent of schools shouldn't screw the police chief's wife in the riverfront park. Let's have that rule, right? Stop that, right? Instead of saying, take all the guns away from us, say, stop screwing somebody else's wife, right? If you want to be superintendent of schools, quit screwing the wrong woman. Can we say that on the radio? I think we can say that, right? We're not using the F word. They use the F word all over the streets now, but we can't say it on the radio, right? So anyway, we need to take a break. We're going to take a break here, and we'll be back here for a little bit more time today.
Bringing new meaning to the term first responders.
Fellow community members stepping forward, volunteering their time to help others faced with what might be some of the most traumatic incidents in their lives.
It's called the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP. It's been used in communities across the United States for years, and its volunteers have been dispatched to provide what they call emotional first aid.
A collaboration between police, paramedics, fire departments, and even hospital staff is making sure residents are emotionally taken care of in a time of crisis. Residents are volunteering their time with the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP, dispatched to the scene of a fire, accident, or death to focus on the emotional needs of those left behind.
It's just being there and being comforting, like a good friend or an extension of your family.
Ready to assist, sit, and listen to community members in a time of tragedy.
To learn more about the Trauma Intervention Program, visit yubasuttertip.org or call 673-9300.
All right. You know, we talking about the last couple of weeks about bullying kids in public schools, and I talked last week about the volleyball game between Yuba City and River Valley as the females were playing. These are teenage girls. I want you guys out there got daughters, how you like to feel like you're protecting them, right? You got them, right? You're watching out for them, taking care of them. And you're concerned about them. And so they end up at a volleyball game. You think, that's a safe thing, playing sports. Right? Kids involved in, right? You always think, hey, your kids are really involved. They're playing athletics. Safe, safe, safe. And then you get your daughter harassed at a volleyball game where guys surround her and make it look like they're having sex with her, right? Because she had to, instead of being courteous and gentleman, picking up the volleyball and tossing it back into the game, they're going to make her bend over and then act like they're going to go for it with her, right? That's what we want. Like, we're going to give them straight A's, good charactered boys, real sharp guys, top notch. We're really proud of those football players, really classy guys. But then we let them do that. That's their freedom of speech over there at River Valley. And then the teachers get an email from the administration saying, don't talk about the Jim Whitaker situation. You can't talk about it. Right? You know what? In Vietnam and in China, in Russia, and under communism, they say, shut your mouth. And then your neighbors turn you in because they said, he was talking about it, right? He's doing this. He said he didn't like the government, right? Same thing, Yuba City High School. Shut your mouth. You can't talk about it. Don't you dare talk about anything that's going on over here with Jim Whitaker. People for years have complained. I didn't know. I don't know anything about it. In 2001, a lady came to me, a lady, not a child, a lady, and told me a story about that situation over there at Yuba City High School. Not for me to turn anybody in or to prosecute anybody. It was when Jim Whitaker was first running for office, and they said, Lou, we know you put out a list of people to vote for people that are interested if they don't know who to vote for. And they said, I didn't know the guy. And they said, this guy touched me. I'm just telling you what she said. I wasn't there. I didn't get touched. So, school says, don't say anything to anybody. When you work for the union, you give up your free speech. Did you know that? You work for the teachers union, you give up your free speech. Some people think you can't even get a job in teaching unless you join the union. Did you know that? That's communism, people. You think, oh, well, we're not calling it. Yeah, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's not freedom. It's not freedom. People, we have a right to speak our mind. You can't say anything. No, but you can let boys say whatever they want and act like they're having sex with a young girl. Unbelievable. Is that unbelievable to you? I was shocked. I read the whole testimony about that from one of the folks that witnessed the whole thing. I thought, you know something? Why would you want to send your kid to a school like that where you can't even go to an athletic event? It's one thing if you go to a party with a bunch of kids that are all under the influence of alcohol and drugs, but when you got an adult-run athletic event and kids aren't behaving themselves? In other words, I understand kids getting out of line, but where you can't even manage the kids, right? It's embarrassing. It's an indictment on the school. You know, if you're in the store and a kid is throwing a royal fit and the parent has no idea what they're doing, they can't get a hold of that. They can't get that kid under control and they have no clue. You can tell they have no clue and that kid's running the show. That's exactly what we got. Who are the adults here? You know, the problem may be that they agree with that behavior because they have been having immoral behavior themselves. You know, if you're sleeping around, it's kind of hard to lean on other people that are misbehaving sexually, right? If you're having immoral sexual behavior themselves. Now, this leads into, I spend a lot of time in the Yuba County Jail, so half my friends are law-abiding people and half of them aren't. So I talk to a lot of people that are ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement detainees. That, in other words, they got arrested for doing something wrong. They violated. It'd be like if you went to a foreign country. You went to visit Italy, and you went over there and got drunk, and you got in the car, and you start driving drunk, or you socked somebody in the mouth because you thought he said something weird to you, and so you got yourself arrested. Well, you're not a citizen, so you're under a little different category when you go to court. So you end up getting put in jail for a while because your misbehavior over there. And then they could tell you to just leave the country, even though you have you have a visa, or maybe there's no visa needed, but they can just say, you're an American, and we don't want you here after what you just did. So leave. So the people that are incarcerated from other countries in the Yuba County Jail, they're from all over. In a class I had the other day, I had people from China, Honduras, Cuba, Nicaragua, Mexico, Philippines, all over. And so it's amazing to me how many of them are there for alcohol and drugs. A lot of them are there for DUIs. And it's almost every week or every other week you read where a person in this country that doesn't belong here as a citizen ran over an American and killed him. It could be a child or an adult or molested them. And so I talked to a guy the other day, and I usually don't ask them what their crime is, but one day I was commenting in the class about having yourself, self-control and self-discipline. And I brought up DUIs. In other words, it's legal to drink, but then it's kind of like it's okay to be angry, but if you don't control your anger, it can cause you problems. People get flustered, like if you hit yourself in the thumb, you get frustrated and angry, but then if you go and beat up your wife over that, that's a problem. So I was talking about that, and I talked about alcohol, how all of us in the room were we were 21 and above. So I said, you can drink alcohol, but if you happen to drive and drink and you get pulled over, it could cost you up to $10,000, and a lot of your wealth goes out the window. And everybody was shaking their head. And I said, have any of you guys had that experience? And almost the whole room raised their hands. In other words, they were all DUI. They'd all been arrested one or more times of DUI. So the other day, a guy said he'd been arrested 4 times for DUI, and had actually done a hit and run. But he said, but no one got hurt, Lou. And he said if they deport me, because he's maybe going to get deported, he has family in the U.S. In fact, he married an American citizen. But they're going to deport him because he didn't have papers right, and or they may. And he said, I'm just going to come back across. Now, when you say the wall is not important, that guy's just going to walk right back across. And this guy, unless he changes his ways, is going to run over somebody and kill him. Now, this week in the paper, in the Appeal Democrat, that's a Yuba County paper. Well, actually, it's the 23rd, so it's within a week. So it says, man with ICE warrant accused of sex crimes. Now, I want you to think about having your children, because this guy violated some children. A Yuba City man is accused of 6 counts of sexual assault on a child. The detectives are looking at the possibility of multiple victims. Juan Manuel Robles. This guy's not from Ireland, as you can tell. He lives in Yuba City, and he's suspicion of sodomy with a child under 14 years of age. Now, some of you think that's okay to have sex with kids under 14, or sex with the police chief's wife. It says he was having sex with kids under 14. And let's see. Lewd and lascivious acts with a child, sexual penetration of a child endangerment, rape, evading a police officer, unlawful sex with a minor, sexual battery, and illegal entry into the United States. Now, Robles was found by Sutter County Sheriff's detectives, and they arrested him after a little tussle. He fled. In other words, you know, when you're in a foreign country, you don't understand all the protocols and the rules. You know, in other words, he didn't buy into the fact that when the police officer puts the lights on you, you're supposed to pull to the curb, right? You agree to that when you drive a car. Or when they say, stop, I want to talk to you, you, out of respect for the officer of the law, you stop. In Mexico and in China, anytime I've been in an accident, and I've been in an accident, you know, gotten deals in both places, the driver of the vehicle flees. I was in a bus crash where we had there must have been 50 or 60 people on that bus, packed to the doors, people sitting in the aisles. They put a stool in the aisle in the buses in China. When you don't get a seat, they'll put a wooden stool in the middle, and you can sit right in the middle. I was in the middle, and we crashed going really fast down the freeway, and it blew out the front axle of the bus, and so that all the windows exploded. So we leaped out the back. And the driver fled. We just saw him going heels and elbows out through the rice field. And so that's how people from foreign countries, they don't agree to the same cultural rules and values that we do in America. So they don't respect the police, right? So this guy says, they say here, he has been arrested for sexual activity with a person over the span of several years, according to the undersheriff, Jeff Pierce. And the sheriff's department I'm going to skip that, but said when Robles was fingerprinted and they submitted those into the system, they noticed a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement warrant came back for his illegal entry into the country. And it says his nationality was reported as Mexican. That means he speaks Mexican, too. So they got him held over there. And now I want you to just think about it. It's enough to have an American goofball messing around with your children. But now we're actually importing them, right? And you may think, here's the thing that you need to think through if you don't travel very much. When you leave the United States, people do not think the same as Americans. Like, we got this thing called the Judeo-Christian ethic. Not everybody buys into it. Not even all people in churches. Some people in churches do stupid stuff and get arrested. But when you go to these other countries, like when the military goes into Afghanistan and those dudes over there are having sex with each other, because there's no women around, so they just get out a little deal of Vaseline and go for it, and they get the blessing from the imam because it's hard times over there. Or they bring a little boy along and tie him to the bedpost to have sex with him. The average American isn't doing that. Are there some kinky people out there that want to, buy a donkey? Yeah, there are. But the average duck in America is not thinking that way or doing that, or raping little girls, or marrying 9-year-old girls. That'd be a Muslim weirdo stuff, right? And, anyway, you see what I'm getting? Or when you go to Mexico, they just don't think that that's so bad to have sex with children. So what we have here is a guy that's already had problems, Juan Manuel Robles, already has got problems. He's almost 50 years old. He's already wanted because if he's already done something wrong, it's just not that he crossed the border. There's something here. He's got a warrant for his arrest. And now he's violated these young kids who, no matter what happens to this guy, these young females are going to deal with that for the rest of their life. Now, that's why there's such a big issue. And when you see, if you've never had anybody damaged by an illegal, and then you have to deal not only with the damage of your husband, wife, daughter, uncle, brother, sister. You not only have to deal with the loss there, but then you have to deal with that person had no concern for the laws of this country. Otherwise, my brother, my sister, my mother, my father would still be here. You see how that gets kind of crazy? And then when you bring in people that don't even believe like we do in terms of sexuality, and just think, if you get a youngster, there's less resistance there, right? Like Harvey Milk used to screw teenage boys and that kind of stuff. So that's why there's such a big issue over this. Now down in Oakland, that Mayor Schaaf, not shaft like a mine shaft. It's no T, Schaaf. And the ICE people down there, they're doing a sweep right now through Northern California. What that means is businesses are not supposed to hire illegals. And so what they do is they contact the businesses ahead of time and saying, we're going to come and do an audit, so get your papers in order. And but they know, because they've been doing their research like good law enforcement, that there's some illegals that have warrants for them. Maybe they're looking for Mr. Robles. And and there's MS-13 gang members. And so they have picked up a couple hundred people. Like at one point here, about a few weeks ago, they had picked up 212 folks just in Los Angeles. Now they're up in Northern California. 195 of them were repeat offenders, and more than half were wanted for serious or violent crimes. Now, I don't know what you think about a violent crime, but you have no idea. It's a different type of violent crime when you're dealing with what they call the MS-13 gang members. So this mayor from Oakland is a real piece of work. Now, this is interesting. I don't know whether you remember that ghost warehouse, that ghost building down there, where they had all those people, homeless people and people, artists and stuff. They were all crammed in there, totally illegal. And they were within a block of the fire department, and nobody filed any kind of action against the building. And all those people burned up in there, right? That's under this Mayor Schaaf. And she thinks she's just the Martin Luther King of civil rights down there, right? And so the ICE people say that because of her, she gave everybody a heads up that ICE was in town, because they contacted the mayor and let her know we're going to be doing work. So she turned around and let everybody, and they said they lost 800 ICE. These are criminals, folks. These aren't just people that outstayed their visa. These are people that have committed crimes. And like I was talking, I had a immigration attorney from the Bay Area call me today to write me a letter for one of the guys in the jail, right? And her comment to me was, and I get it, the guy is nice. I've met him. He's an old man. He's probably my age or older. And so she said, he's a really nice guy, Lou, and except he's got a drinking problem, right? And that's what he gets arrested on, right? Drinking and driving. Now, you know Nicole. We got Nicole. And, I have a friend that she was hit by a drunk driver when she was in a car, and at 1 year old, she had her spine damaged, and she's been in a wheelchair. She's now what? She's 30? She's 30-something. And so it's a bummer. And so if a person's got an alcohol problem, now they're up here damaging people in this country, as opposed to Mexico, where if they run over somebody down there, they just run off. They never do deal with it. So are we about out of time? Give me a little. Oh, we got 4 minutes. Okay. So because we're pre-recording this, I can't tell by the clock in here. So if you're just listening and you want to call in and you're saying, I want to call and talk to those guys and get in on this, you're just going to get a recording, because we're pre-recording this. But the best use by date is March 3rd. After that, it's going to be stale. So I wanted to talk to you about MS-13 a little bit. A few years ago, I got a call. I was working for the Church of Glad Tidings, and when I picked up the phone, a gal was hysterical on the other end of the line and crying. I couldn't get her. I couldn't even understand her. I had to hose her down a little bit to get her to shut up so I could listen to her. So we talked, and I wasn't too patient with her, but finally I said, okay, I'll help you. And she was living at Casa de Esperanza temporarily, but she was on the run from a gang who tried to stab her, and it was MS-13. And it was the first time I really heard about them or met anybody with MS-13. Up here, we just have the Norteños and the Sereños and those people, but this MS-13 are actually from San Salvador, and so she said they tried to stab me, and I had my baby in my arms, and they stabbed the baby, and the baby died. And so she had a little girl with her that was a maybe 8 or 9 year old girl, and they were living at the battered women's place. And so over a period of months, I brought her out to the church, and I had her work for me, and my office has always got too much stuff all crammed in there. So we went through and kind of did a muck out of my office, and I paid her, and I got to know her, and I helped her get a new identity. I'd never done that before. In other words, we just made her a new person, new social security number, new name, new everything, both mom and daughter. And but it's the first time I realized how deadly these guys are, these MS-13 people. They do not operate with the same rules that criminals operate in the U.S. In fact, if you go below the border, like I have never had as much problems in any other country as I've had in Mexico. I like Mexico. In fact, I'd like to live down there. But there's problems, and they just do business. They kill a lot of people down there. I think they've killed between 2,000 and 3,000 people in Tijuana alone recently. And they just don't shoot somebody. They chop their heads off, and then they hang them up and stuff. They do weird stuff like that because they want to intimidate people. And so MS-13, they like to just not kill somebody, but mutilate and chop their bodies up. So this is a big problem in the U.S. Now, maybe you haven't had a problem here in Yuba Sutter counties, but there's certain cities where they've settled in because Obama just opened the floodgates. Remember all those minor kids that came in? Well, a lot of those dudes are 20 and 30-year-old guys, tattooed from head to toe. Their lips were tattooed. Their tongues were tattooed. Their eyelids were tattooed. These guys are gnarly. And under Obama, he let 300,000 of these youngsters come in, right? And give an amnesty under the DACA program, right? That's the one Yuba College funds all their education. They've been linked to crimes in 22 different states. 207 murders since 2012 have been tied to the gang. It's called Amada Salvatrucha, MS, right? MS-13. Over 500 cases nationwide where MS-13 members have been charged with major crimes. And I'm going to read some of those in just a minute when we come back. All right, welcome back. We're talking about the MS-13 gang problem in the United States. I stumbled across a clip. It was a White House kind of a convocation and a round table or whatever of key employees of the government, like Justice Department attorneys dealing with MS-13 gang, people dealing with assaults on the United States, from terrorism to gang members. And these are people that are in the courts and prosecuting crimes and doing the investigations on crimes. They're very bright people. They're just not, they weren't politicians, I guess is what I'm saying. And so I was just so fascinated. They started to describe some of the crimes, and I was just amazed. They weren't the normal crimes you would hear about. Somebody gets shot with a gun, right? A gunshot, 2 shots. They were deals where somebody gets shot 35 times, stabbed 67 times with his head cut off. So they were discussing the MS-13 gang situation that was made much worse because Obama just thought, we'll just let all these people in and they'll just adjust to American life. No, they want, it's just like the Muslims with Sharia law. They want American life to adjust to them. They want Sharia law their way. So they were discussing a resurgence and a threat to public safety in communities where MS-13 has rebuilt itself because of Obama allowing all these people, these kids, quote unquote, 15 to 30 years of age from Central America, 300,000. And so it's a huge problem. And so this one lady who has written about this, I think it's Jessica Vaughn. The research she supervised at the immigration think tank found that MS-13 concentrations were in areas where so-called unaccompanied alien children, you remember Obama talking about that? Unaccompanied. Where did these kids come from? They weren't 10 years old. They were put under Obama. They were let go in Virginia, California, Virginia, California, Maryland, and New York. They included those participating in the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, commonly called DACA. And those are the group that Democrats say they're our best and brightest hope for the future. So this woman who did this research cited an example of a Maryland DACA recipient charged with gang activity who urged pals in El Salvador to take advantage of Obama's policies. Listen to this. She says one MS-13 clique leader in Frederick, Maryland, who had received a DACA work permit and was employed as a custodian at a middle school in Frederick, Maryland, and who was recently incarcerated for various gang-related crimes, reportedly was told by gang leaders in El Salvador to take advantage of the lenient policies on unaccompanied minors or children to bring in new recruits, knowing that they would be allowed to resettle in the area with few questions asked under Obama. Several of these unaccompanied minors now have been arrested and incarcerated for various crimes, including a vicious random attack on a sheriff's deputy in 2015. Crime, torture, and theft. Now, usually in America, we have crime, but we don't have torture, right? That would be South American, Mexican, right? Russian. They get into that. MS-13 members, she said, identified in the cases we found were accused of various serious crimes, including 207 murders. More than 100 were accused of conspiracy, racketeering, and dozens of others were charged with drug trafficking, sex trafficking, attempted murder, sexual assaults, and extortion. Extortion means that they scare you to death and take your stuff. So here's some of the crimes that they are tabulating according to topic. Murder, 160. Conspiracy racketeering, 81. Attempted murder, 35. Immigration violation, 30. Murder in the aid of racketeering, 24. First-degree murder, 22. Drug trafficking and extortion, 19. Assault, 18. Drug trafficking, 17. Extortion, 10. Unlawful entry, 10. Rape, 8. Conspiracy to commit extortion by force, 7. Accessory to murder, 6. On and on and on and on it goes. And so the report noted the difficulty in seizing and deporting some of those involved because the crimes occurred in many of the 300 sanctuary regions in the nation that don't cooperate with ICE. Now, that's what we have here. We don't have that in Sutter County because it wouldn't be in the paper and being talked about working with ICE, right? So what you have is currently these cities like Oakland, Sacramento, San Francisco, L.A., saying we're sanctuary cities. Now, the government, the communist government of California with a K, is proclaiming the entire state a sanctuary state. Now, I mentioned earlier that the Sutter Butte Tea Party Patriots is going to have on March 25th a constitutional seminar for law enforcement and anybody else that's interested to talk about the Constitution. In other words, what sheriffs can do under the Constitution of the United States. They don't have to pay attention to what some of these state authorities are saying. You got it? So it says here, this lady that did all this research said the proliferation of sanctuaries may complicate disruption of MS-13, said the report. Many of the hotbeds of MS-13 activity are also places where local officials have adopted these kinds of policies. So there are approximately 300 sanctuary jurisdictions in the country, and they include municipalities, counties, and states. About half of MS-13 arrests in our case set, 222, occurred in sanctuary jurisdictions. So ICE can go in there and make arrests, but they're not going to get the local law enforcement is forbidden to cooperate with ICE. Now, it sounds like the Sutter County Sheriff's Office, who made this recent arrest, or the police department made the recent arrest, is already contacting ICE and working with them. Very interesting stuff. Who knows what this is going to turn out to? Wouldn't it be amazing if Mayor Schaaf, the female, gets arrested? Wouldn't that be amazing? If she gets arrested for interfering in the federal government does have a job of protecting the United States of America from foreign invaders. The MS-13 is a foreign invader, and if she is providing comfort and to the enemy, right? I think she can be arrested. Like if you have a friend of yours that you know he's on the run and law enforcement's looking for him, and you hide him, you conceal him, provide comfort, you can be arrested for that. I think this mayor may have a problem there. But we'll see. You know, she's all cocksure. Maybe she thinks she's going to run for a higher office. And she's trying to make a name for herself, but maybe incarcerating her, she can become a martyr, or some kind of a figurehead for future praise being given to her by people like La Raza. Or, it's interesting to me. I mentioned in my article, maybe this is what got the woman all PO'd about me when I wrote Black History Month, because I brought up the fact that some of these blacks today, when they say our people, like Obama used to, he wasn't referring to me and you if you're of a different color than him. Remember, he used to say our people? When he said our people, he was not referring to Americans. Even though he was the president, he was referring to black people, right? Now, that's racist. Mexican people, some are affiliated with this thing called La Raza, R-A-Z-A. That is the race, right, called the race. Now, that's just stupid thinking. Racism is stupid thinking. And it started long before Charles Darwin in the 1800s, but Charles Darwin said there were multiple races. That's silly. There's just one human race. That's what the Bible says, and that's the book. That's the manual around here. You don't have to pay attention. It's just like my Honda Element. I could ignore the manual to my own despair. It's better if I read the manual and buy the right parts for the car. But that's why we have a manual. But there's only one race, and so all this nonsense about my people, like when I'm in Vietnam and I refer to our people, they know I'm referring to where I'm from in America. I'm not saying we're better than anybody else. I'm just saying this is the way we do it in America, right? Doesn't mean it may be worse than what they do in Vietnam. So anyway, that's MS-13, and it's interesting how ICE is making all these raids on 7-Eleven. You've noticed that? 7-Eleven stores. Yeah. So what's happening is people said, oh, I can't believe it. I like 7-Eleven, as if that's the issue. It wasn't like they don't like the company Southland Corporation who owns 7-Eleven. What's happening is these a lot of these foreigners, a lot of them are Muslims that own these stores, and they're taking advantage of the illegals, and they're not paying them. They work them, and then they tell them, I'm going to pay you half the money. I'm going to put you up in a house over here. You're going to have to live about 20 or 30 of you in this house, and I'm going to pay you half the what I'd pay the normal people. And they say, if you complain, I'm going to turn you into ICE, right? And they take advantage of them. They do sex trade with them. They do all kinds of things, and they're ripping people off. And so what's happening is ICE is aware of this. In fact, ICE is also aware in Orange County, one of the most wealthy counties in California, there are houses, nice homes that are full of illegals from all over the world, not just Mexico. And they're flying in here, and they're paying tens of thousands of dollars to birth a baby over here for a couple of reasons. One, they could make it a citizen here, even though they're illegal. And some are Chinese, and they can't have more than one or two kids over there, and they want another kid, so they come over and have it over here. And they get it. You and I pay for the baby delivery, right, to our government. And so ICE is also invading those things. And probably some of you liberals would say, I can't believe they're bothering all those pregnant women. It's just like the folks got a flat spot on their brain. That's all. It's just a disease, a little retarded. That's what I say. So how are we doing on time? You going to give me a heads up? Oh, we got 10 minutes. We're doing really good. All right. So I wanted to mention, just give another heads up before we get to the end today. I know we got a little bit of time left. So if you guys out there are looking for jobs, there's jobs all over the place. I can't believe how many jobs there are. Even people that I know that are got a criminal background are getting a good chance at a good job. So if you are looking for a job, you might check into Elite Universal Security. If you got a rugged background, this wouldn't be the one for you. You ought to look at maybe construction or something like that, or work for you, Sutter Disposal. I know they hire a lot of people to give them a second chance and give them a chance to get on their feet out there. And in other words, they're felony friendly. It doesn't mean they want people to misbehave. They're trying to give them a chance to get on their feet and pick up that unclaimed debris out there. So if you want to check in at Elite Universal Security, if you're a business that's being harassed by panhandlers, in fact, let me just check this out. Gonzalo Espinoza, 25, homeless, was arrested by the Yuba County Sheriff's Office on February 25th out in Linda, and suspicion of carrying a loaded firearm, obstructing or resisting an executive officer, felon. He was a felon in the possession of a firearm and ammunition. He was booked into Yuba County Jail. That's a homeless person. You think, oh, well, these homeless people, they're just really great citizens, and they've just had a spot of hard luck. They got laid off, and they were buying a house, and they just put their tent in the back of their Subaru, and they drove down to the river bottoms because they just couldn't afford any place else. They couldn't afford rent. And so actually, this is a guy that used to work for Intel or Hewlett Packard or PG&E, and now he's in the river bottoms, and he's all under the influence of Oxycontin, and he's homeless, and that's not how it is at all. You obviously don't know what you're talking about. Neither do these government workers. It's actually the homeless business has become an industry. Did you know that? They got consultants. They got all these experts but the experts never do guarantee anything, right? They just say, oh, well, this is what we did in ABC town or XYZ county, but we're not guaranteed it'll happen. It'll work here, right? So there's a whole industry, multi-million-dollar industry. In fact, one of my friends said that she read where Yuba and Sutter counties has now become a destination place for homeless people because, there's places to stay. They get stay on the river. It's like Riverview, Riverfront Park. It's got riverfront property, and they don't have to pay for it. They can just poop wherever they want. They can, we got all the churches feeding them, and clothes. They can get the clothes they want. They got it going. They can get welfare, everything. In fact, I've heard that Sutter County Welfare doesn't even check the residence of people. You can just come in here and get welfare, and they don't even check out whether you got a legitimate residence or not. So Gonzales Espinosa, 25, he had a loaded gun. He's a felon, so that means he's been in trouble. And he resisted. In other words, instead of being polite to the police officer, he fought him, right? They had to do a takedown. They had to dip him, as they say in juvenile hall. And then we got Nicholas Henry over there in Yuba City. He's 31, and they arrested him. He's homeless. A suspicion of false personation. In other words, they pulled him over, stopped him for something. They gave a wrong name, so they didn't buy it. Somehow they figured it out. Somebody had discernment. So it's a problem. So recently, they say now that the federal government, this consortium of government people, what they all get together every once in a while, 25, 30 agencies, and it's kind of like counting the ducks on the Pacific Flyway. They count the homeless. They get together and they bring their little snacks and coffee, and they brainstorm. They talk about the homeless. Then when they leave, they feel like they solved something. So they counted up all the homeless recently in all the shelters. In other words, people that weren't really homeless, they had a temporary home. They were living at the depot. They were living at Casa de Esperanza. They were living at the rescue mission. They were living here. They were living there. And they counted up about 350 people. Now, I haven't done the math on this, but there were, say there's 350, and divide that by 160,000, okay? Divide that by 100. See what the percentage is. So, I got a calculator on my phone, but I don't want to get distracted because I can't talk and do that at the same time. I'd have to go silent here, and I know people aren't going to be happy about that. So anyway, I was mentioning if you want a job or if you have a problem with homelessness and people panhandling and customers, I know for a fact that I've had friends tell me they don't go to the Walgreens here in Marysville anymore because they don't like to get confronted by homeless folks. Now, I was over there the other day, and a black lady came up to me and said she was stranded. She had a car, but she needed gas to get back to Roseville. And I didn't give her any money. I thought she was full of baloney. So then I was over at Sam's Club, and I went over there several days later, and she came up to me there. And I said, wait a minute. You're the same lady. You're the same lady that was over at Walgreens. You're always stranded up here, always headed to Roseville. Make up my mind. So anyway, so that's that. So if you need some help, you got somebody leaving a pile on your doorstep, or they're pilfering from your business, or they're harassing your customers, you need to call 749-0280, 530-749-0280. Or if you want to take some classes, maybe you need to learn how to use a taser. You need to get some, I saw on every once in a while on the internet, they'll show a video of somebody getting carjacked. Holy mackerel. And man, if you didn't even have a gun, but you had some pepper spray or mace or something, you could blast the dude in the face and then punch it and get away. So if you want to learn how to get some of that stuff and how to use it, or if you want to get into the guard business and become a security guard, or maybe get into law enforcement or go into corrections, you could go to the APIacademy.com, API-academy.com, and get yourself some schooling. Did you finish your Temple Coffee, or are you already it's like Jesus, the good wine came first, then the bad wine's at the end. It's like if you go to the wedding, when everybody's toasted, then they bust out the bad wine, the funky stuff. So now we're into the Big Kahuna's coffee here. We blasted through the Temple Coffee. It was pretty good, right? Do you like it? I liked it. It was tasty. Normally I don't even drink coffee. We're recording here at night for in the morning on 3/3. So if you got it Saturday, this is fresh bread. No stale bread with mold on it here. So it's best used by on March 3rd. So check out those guys out at Elite Universal Security, and they will help you. They'll help you get into the workforce, or they'll help you take care of people that are trying to cause you problems, just cause you problems out there. Let's see. I wanted to just give you an update on trauma intervention. We were promoting it a lot. We'll lighten up on the commercials because I don't like to do too many commercials, but we're in the midst of a training, and that's why actually I'm not going to be here this Saturday. That's why we're doing a pre-record, because we'll finish our training, and we got 10 or 11 red-hot new recruits going to bolster our troops, and we've been having a great training and really some quality people. We got 2 teenagers I'm really proud of. They're one's homeschooled, and one goes to the Marysville Charter Academy of the Arts. I think that's how you say it, MCAA, Marysville Charter Academy of the Arts. I've had a number of tip people go to that school, and we got these kids are sharp, and I'm so proud of them, and they're going to do a good job to help people in a very difficult time, and so that's what's happening with me, and that's why we're going to do this, and then we'll be back to our live action on Saturdays, where we come to you 9 to noon every Saturday. Do you know that we got, a couple of minutes? So I want to talk to you for a little bit about the whole global warming and fiasco. You remember first they started calling global warming, and they remember the ice caps. It was going to get warmer and warmer and warmer, and the ice caps were going to melt, and the oceans were going to rise, and if you were living on the coast, it was going to flood you out. And all these terrible things are going to happen. Remember, they were blaming everything on global warming, like all these. Remember the hurricanes, and they would say we're going to have a hurricane a month and stuff. But when things the predictions didn't stand up. They finally, like for instance, if they had a big environmental, if they wanted to have a big protest or a big meeting somewhere or a big march, they'd always get frozen out, and it would throw them. So finally, they had to change the name because it got so embarrassing that the pitches and the arguments they were making were constantly wrong, so they had to change the name to climate change. So then no matter what the climate did, it justified their argument to take more and more of our money and control our life and take away our freedoms, right? So we found out that the research and the scientists were being funded by these big organizations, and then they were lying about the research so it would substantiate or support the lies. And so scientists were just liars. And finally they got caught, and their emails got outed where they were colluding. You heard that term, colluding, anywhere? So they were colluding and putting out this lie. So pretty soon now we got all our kids learning about global warming, and it's all just a bunch of BS. Now I'm going to tell you about a new one. Welcome back. We got about 30 minutes here, moving up towards noon, and then we got some guys coming in. They got a pretty hot little sports show going on, talking about sports, and they're all syndicated. They got all kinds of stuff going on, broadcasting all over the U.S. So if you want to hang around after I'm done, you like sports, they will be getting into it. But I wanted to talk about it as I started just before the break. I wanted to mention how it used to be scientists, you just trusted them. You just thought they were honest. It's just like if you got dealt with the IRS, you thought, oh, they're honest. Or you dealt with the FBI, or you just think these people are honest, right? But now we realize that scientists have a bias, and the bias is dependent on who's funding them. And they aren't independent. They're purchased. They're like a prostitute, and you could purchase something that you want from them. And so these people with an agenda like the World Health Organization or the United Nations that want to really manage the whole world and control your life, they they come up with an agenda, and then they get the research to back the agenda. So that's what happened when we went from global warming, but when that didn't stand up, and where they realized that where they were taking the temperatures around the Earth, they were fraudulently making notes about those temperatures and changing them to make it look like there was a slight warming over the years, when in reality there wasn't any, or it was actually getting cooler. So that's when they changed to the term climate change, which is just, it's crazy. It's a George Orwell 1984 stupid think. So now we have a product that we have become used to using in the last, I don't know, maybe 30 years or so, called glyphosate. Have you ever heard of it? I know Wikiman has, because he and I used to use it constantly out when we worked for Church of Glad Tidings. Glyphosate, Glyphosate. So anybody that had to control weeds, I remember when I was living with my parents as a youngster going to school, high school and grammar school, and we had a fence around our yard that separated us. We had a really nice yard. My parents wanted a nice yard, so we worked at that. But the neighbors didn't do anything with their yard, and so Johnson grass would grow up 6 foot high on the other side of the fence. So we would my dad would bring home diesel, and we would literally pour oil or diesel along the fence bottom to kill the Johnson grass, right, on the neighbor's side, because it would come up under the fence. So I was just telling him while you were running to get coffee about glyphosate. You know glyphosate, right? Yeah, you know. I was just telling him you and I was spraying it out there at the church. So you may know glyphosate as Roundup, because when Monsanto, the chemical company, created Roundup, it had a patent, and so it's quite expensive. You remember when it, for years, it was, you just really measured out just exactly the amount. You know, you could put an ounce in a gallon of water and do a lot of weed damage with that. Well, my friend Brian Nagley, who runs a business taking care of landscape needs of big organizations around the area, he used to say how safe it was, and that he'd been to all these. You know, he actually is a professional in the business and understands chemicals. I was an amateur, and but I started when we were farming. I was using a lot of glyphosate or Roundup to clean up under pomegranate bushes, and so we could irrigate them and not and get the water spread well. Anyway, the United Nations came up with a study that said that glyphosates or Roundup, now the not copyright, but the patent on Roundup has ended, and now you can get a lot cheaper, and it comes under different names. But the product is a glyphosate chemical. And so you mix it with water, and you spray it on weeds, and the weed assimilates it into its system, and it kills it all the way down to the roots. It's pretty cool. But what they said, the United Nations, they supposedly they reported on some research, and they said that it causes cancer in animals and humans. And so everybody, the liberals like to attack Monsanto. For instance, well, I won't get into this because that's the I don't have enough time to get in the other part. But anyway, they began attacking Monsanto because they discovered glyphosates and developed it into Roundup. But now it's available under all kinds of names. But it was shocking after all these years to have this research said that now it's cancer causing. But the fact is, Reuters, Reuters, pronounced Reuters, they did a special investigation, and again, the United Nations fraudulently, they they took the research which said that it was not cancer-causing and took those phrases out. Isn't that amazing? And so once people heard the interpretation of this research as saying it was cancer-causing, other people went to do statistical analysis and did their own research. And they said, we can't come up with those. They can't come up with that. And so this one sentence said, it noted that the report firmly and unanimously agreed that the compound glyphosate, had not caused abnormal growths in mice being studied. And but what the United Nations group deleted that sentence. They just took it out. In fact, Reuters found that 10 significant changes were found in the study. The government went in, the government researchers went in, and they just changed the conclusions to the study to make it show that this was a cancer-causing product. And so, I like Nikki Haley, and she's the representative for the United States over there at the United Nations. And I wish one day she would just serve an eviction notice on those people and tell them to go back home and make that place into condos or something. I am so sick of this. In fact, now there's did you hear about this sex scandal where it's just totally corrupt. They're liars. They're cheats. They are involved in sex trafficking. A few years ago, they were involved in where we had an oil embargo, and they were doing, some of the top people in the UN were making money off getting around the oil embargo. So anyway, it's crazy. In testimony as part of the personal injury. So once this came out that Monsanto was causing cancer with Roundup, all kinds of people started suing that had cancer, started suing Monsanto, right? You know about this. You know, because you're interested in Monsanto. Yeah, you're interested in I think I'm saying it wrong. It's glyphosate. Glyphosate, not phosphate. Glyphosate. And so in testimony as part of the personal injury lawsuits against Monsanto, this Jameson guy told lawyers for Monsanto he did not know when, why, or by whom the edits had been made. Like, I don't know how those edits got made. I don't know how, because the Monsanto people went and looked at the research and said, wait. This research said this, but your interpretation of the research says just the opposite over here. And when they got into court and everybody had to testify under oath, these dirty dogs said, we have no idea how that happened. So the cool thing is, this guy named, I want to tell you who this guy is. This guy is named, he writes for Breitbart. His name is James Dellingpole, Delingpole. And I just bought a book. It's called Watermelon. In other words, he uses the fruit called watermelon because it describes the green movement. It's green on the outside and communists on the inside, red, right? And I'm telling you, I just started reading it. It is awesome. It's an older book. It's been around. Watermelon. It's just called Watermelon. And I'd read an article about Dellingpole, and he told about a couple books, and I ordered both of them, and I just started reading, and I thought, I love this. It's so simple, and he's done all this research. So anyway, let me finish this up, and you keep me dialed in on the time because my clock's off in here. So he said, we've been here before, Dellingpole says, the author. He says, in 2004, I reported for Breitbart about the politically motivated attempts to ban a form of pesticide called neonicotinoids. In 2013, I reported on a similar attempt to ban a herbicide called atrazine. He said these campaigns are part of an extremely well-funded, carefully orchestrated campaign by the environmentalist left to harass the chemical industry and the agriculture industry which uses its products. So, when you hear about these things, my tendency is to believe them. You know, when science says something, I think I start off. I said, "Oh, that's a bummer. That's a bummer, right?" Like, and then I find out it's a crock of crap, right? So anyway, I'm just looking here to see. We're running out of time. It says these tasks. Dellen Poll says these tactics are standard operating procedure across the agencies of both the United Nations and the European Union, all of which are hopelessly in the control of the green lobby, often because they themselves have been infiltrated by environmental ideologues with an anti-free market, anti-U.S. agenda. When Trump announced that he was going to withdraw the U.S. from UNESCO, that's the UN's education, scientific, and culture body. They're liars, UNESCO, because they were anti-Israel. He says this is a step in the right direction. So this Scott Pruitt, who is the head of the Environmental Protection Organization or agency, EPA, he stopped the practice of sue and settle. You heard that before, sue and settle. That's where the Obama appointees at the Environmental Protection Agency were in cahoots with these Sierra Club and all these groups that started out with good motives, but now are being controlled by even foreign governments and people with a negative agenda, not just to clean up the environment. And they got in cahoots with them, and they would convince them to file a lawsuit against the federal government to say, remove certain properties out of the general use of the citizens of the United States and put them into a park or something, or fight anything, fight anything that would take away the freedoms of American business or whatever. And so they would say, sue us over these things, and we will settle with you, and then we'll make a new regulation. And so what it was doing is making it more and more difficult to mine precious minerals or products that we need in industry, or to drill for oil, or to extract oil, or to extract natural gas, or do anything. It just made it so, like Obama would make it seem like, hey, I'm not standing in the way. They just need to file the permits. Well, the permit process was so difficult that nobody would want to go through it because it costs you a fortune. And it's just like a few years ago, before I quit work at Glad Tidings, the guys out there asked me if I'd go to Sutter County, and we wanted to change the use of a building. That would be building 400, right? The flat top building out there. And we wanted to change the use of it from a daycare center to a place where we could house people, help them get on their feet. So I went over and talked to a really nice guy at the planning department at Sutter County, and he said, I said, this is what we were doing. We got a 6,000 square foot building. We'd like to change it, and we'd like to help people get on their feet and move them in and train them how to, stay clean from drugs and alcohol, and maybe take them out of prison and get them a job and get them a car and, just launch them. And so what would that cost? Because it was going to be more than just changing a few walls around, because we had to ask their permission to change the definition of the use, even though it was on our private property and we had 35 acres and we weren't hurting anybody. We weren't starting a nuclear power plant, right? Right? Or starting a place that smelled like a fart, like that place across the freeway, the prune place. It wasn't going to hurt anything. But so he told me, so it's going to cost you $6,000 and 6 months. And he said, I can't guarantee a yes on it. You have to go before the planning commission and go before the supervisors if you need to appeal it. And so I just said, no thanks, right? Now, that's what happens in government where they say, well, we didn't stop them. Well, they stopped you because they made it so bureaucratic and so expensive to even get to discuss it and get a decision in your favor, even though you weren't having any impact on the neighbors. You just give up and go on about your business and walk away from it. So that's what's been going on. And when Scott Pruitt reversed and forbid the sue and settle effort, what's happening is, I don't know, the GDP in the last quarter is now up, in the last month of the last quarter, it's almost 4%. Obama never could get it up there. And it's not like the government is creating any products, but what's happening is the Trump administration is taking the rules and the restrictions off business. It's not so they can pollute. It's so they can actually run their business without constantly having government come over and tell them how they want to do it. And it's just, I think people have become so used to being governed. Every move you're asking permission every time you turn around. You got to ask permission. Well, can I sell this? Can I sell that? Well, can I open up an hour early? Can I have employees a little bit longer? It's not freedom. It's communism. I'm going to, in the future here, I'm going to spend some time on helping you understand how the federal government was never supposed to own land in the states, was never supposed to be ruling on abortion, was never supposed to be telling us how to use water, or whether we can mine, or whether we could have oil, or whether or not we could export products, right? They were just, the federal government only, like, for instance, James Madison pleaded with the delegation from New York because they weren't going to ratify the Constitution. They didn't want to join. They thought it's freaky for us. We don't want to be a united state. We want to be our own state, our own sovereign state. He said, please ratify this. We need you, right? Please do it. And he assured them, he said, listen, this federal government, they were afraid of the federal government. They just fought a war to get a federal government off their back. And so he said, listen, we have restricted the federal government to very, very, very few powers. And we've given all the power to the states. And the federal government only has a power to deal with people from without the country. In other words, to stop foreign invaders like Muslims that were pirates, that were cutting people's heads off. That's why they had leathernecks around Marines to keep them from getting their head cut off, right? And so he said, don't worry, this federal government is in check because they're not going to have anything to do with the states. Look at what we got now. We got the Supreme Court telling us we got to buy insurance, right? We have, if you interviewed the average person on the street, they would say that if the state wants to do something and the federal government doesn't want them to do something, they got to obey the federal government. That's totally contrary to what the Constitution says. The state governments have power. And my contention is the counties have a lot of power. And that's why the Tea Party patriots are trying to educate law enforcement and particularly the sheriffs to tell them that they are the chief constitutional officer with all the power in the county, and they can tell the state and the federal to go fly a kite. And that's what John Augustini did up at El Dorado County when he told the Forest Service to quit citing. They were given residents of El Dorado County citations for just being in the forest up there. And he says, first of all, he said, I am not going to honor your citations, and put your guns up. This is our property. So what's happened is, did you know in the state of Nevada that 80%, that's where the Bundy's Ranch is, 80% of the state of Nevada is owned by the federal government, if you can put it that way. They have control of 80% of the state. You drive through Nevada and you look both sides, that isn't private property. That's federal managed property. And many of the western states are that way. Do you know that wasn't that way on the East Coast where the original colonies started? You know why? They wouldn't have ratified the Constitution. If the federal government said we're controlling all this property, they would have never ratified the Constitution of the United States. It would have never been a United States, because they said, you don't belong in our property. This is Vermont. This is North Carolina. This is New York. This is Massachusetts. This is not the federal government. But when the West was added, you could see how fast that things changed. We done? It's over. We'll be back next week.